don't know.
We're going live
Okay.
because this is good talk. Because we were just talking like about, what do you mean you have the duo Demonology music?
I do. Well, it's my own music, but I mean, James likes it too, and it's duo fitting.
Is
You
it?
know, if you heard it, you can if you want to try and cue it up, you can. I'm just gonna probably have to like black out and then come back onto the screen. No, but I could experiment with it. I could just go to YouTube and play it, and that worked the last time I tried it. But you're only as good as your last time, so I don't think I don't think it would. You're only as good as that last one.
Yeah.
But then you try again. Yeah.
Cool. How are you, dear? I feel like it's been over a month since you've been
Well,
on.
it seems like it because I couldn't do it last time. I forget why. I think I was just didn't have the
Oh, I
voice.
think you were a little under the weather, maybe.
I was under the weather. Yes. I mean, which is rare for me not to be able to do that, but I just couldn't. I didn't even have the vocal capacity for it. I was just trained. So doing much better than that. Much better.
That's good because that was the last time we talked. We were talking about everything that you and James are going through, COVID wise and everything. So
it has been a couple of months. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're feeling better?
Yes, I am not at 100% yet. But it seems like I'm getting there. I just want a steady improvement. I'll be happy with that, however long it takes. But I have a relapse every once in a while where I get this massive throat congestion and have to non-productively clear my throat. And but the relapses are not as long and not as severe as they were before.
Oh,
The last time I spoke with you, I was going to speak with you. Let's put it that way. I did have one of those relapses and it just took my voice away. It wasn't even worth me coming on, because
well, you did come on for a second, I think.
Jumped in for a while. You know what? I'm thinking of the time before last because as I remember, I told James and you that I would try to come on for a minute or 3 minutes, whatever I could do. And I came in just a few minutes after the beginning, like 3 minutes after, and I just stayed for the entire show. And I remember that was the last time. So it wasn't too bad last time. But, I was still hurting. I was still, let me get through this. But things are better. I had a doctor's appointment, a consultation, to talk about long haul COVID is what they call it when you have repeated symptoms. And they're the specialist is trying to differentiate between what might be allergies and what's being exacerbated by the COVID residue. Now I've had two recent tests. The last one was about a week and a half ago, and I tested negative both times. My results came back negative. So, that's
good.
Very good indeed.
No, it's
So now,
crazy. Really quick about talking about COVID. My boyfriend's son, in the beginning of the year had COVID, and he's a healthy 26-year-old. He's very healthy, very active and stuff. And he was quarantining. He got done quarantining like the end of February, and then got his first vaccine. Goes away, and got very sick while he was away. He was stuck in Nashville for over a week in the hospital, this and that. Long of the story of everything, after this all said and done, turns out he has this like rare, like only 1 in 100 people get it, rare post-COVID thing where it's called multi system inflammatory syndrome or something, MSIS. And it's like this weird thing where all your organs inside get inflamed. He now has a weak heart that it's going to take like 3 to 6. Yeah. So he literally has the heart of like a 85, 90-year-old right now. So
can he recover to a certain degree and regain he will get stronger, but I mean, the damage is done kind of. And
no, so he sees the doctor I work for, who's an interventional cardiologist. He's amazing. Right. So he came to see him. He thinks that, unfortunately he's going to have to be on like a blood thinner and some medications, for a little bit, as if he were 85 years old with a bad heart, for about 3 to 6 months. And he thinks like over time, his heart's going to get his heart will go back to normal. So
yeah, the human body can have a remarkable resilience. It's also quite fragile. So I think at his age, probably he will regain, if not total, partial recovery of his strength and his heart's health and all. You know,
Right.
wish him the best because I wasn't hit that severely. The first couple of months were tricky. The first 2 weeks I could have expired from it. I've talked to people since, and physicians don't want to give you the worst case scenario, and then they end up hinting at it.
Right.
So, and they just didn't know at that time how it was going to affect me. I lost 56 pounds body weight in the first 10 days. And of course, most of that's not a healthy weight loss. Most of that was fluid loss.
Right.
And so I was dehydrating, and I didn't lose my sense of taste or smell, but I had no interest in food, and drinking was uncomfortable. I felt like I could choke. So it was pretty rough. I
Yeah,
said,
what was weird with him though is like he was over it already. He was like healthy. He was going to visit somebody in Nashville, so he's like traveling. Yeah, so he was already like post COVID, like 2 months, and then all of a sudden just gets sick, and then it was like this whole thing. So
yeah. Talk about not fair. He'd had his first injection too. And
right.
to go through that, yeah. Well, it does make you feel more fortunate.
It does. It does. Um, so I don't know if we talked about this last time, but like being sick like that, do you think that hinders your abilities?
It hinders my
Or
ability to go up and down the stairs pretty much, and get into the car and drove. I don't think, it's weird to think of because it hit so suddenly. And I didn't drive my car for the first 2 weeks. And then I just backed it out of the driveway. I might have gone. No, I didn't go to a store. I just backed it out to make room for somebody, and that felt weird. Fortunately, I have some good friends, and I have two very good friends that helped me through this. My actual landlord, Kyle McCurdy, and of course Elise. I what a dismal prospect. It was bad anyway, but without Elise, I don't know. She's an angel.
yeah,
She's selfless. I mean, character comes out at those times, and some people you don't hear from,
so
except for
true.
it was some people I heard from. It was, however well-meaning they were, it was morbid curiosity. Like Carl was so vital. Now he's been struck down. Let's find out if he's going to live. It was like that, But I understand that people get curious,
Yeah.
and I just
Well, I
dropped
mean,
out.
like your abilities, like if you were to, you know,
Demon or something like that.
like what?
You mean like try to like rid somebody or ease
Yeah,
somebody's
yeah, like your
form?
yeah, like do you think it opens it or do you think it clogs it?
It did both because I felt so vulnerable. I just didn't want to deal with, demonic realm. I had some visitations, in fact, and we can call them hallucinations, but they were waking dreams. They were very vivid, and I got to see demons. I don't know if that's how my mind filtered it, but the first 2 weeks, especially the first 10 days, um, I heard those voices and saw their figures telling me I wasn't going to survive this and I better give up.
Oh
You know,
wow.
how
Wow.
can you explain a situation like that when for me who like to think of myself as non-suggestible and rational, to actually encounter uh, beings like that, speaking to me. Yes, in the final run, it was almost certainly all hallucination, but that's how my mind processed it, and it was nonetheless real to me. So, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
to fall on the floor and not knowing nobody's around to help me up, and blood coming from my nose, and just not knowing, we don't know. There's so much of this unknown about this disease. How do I know my case isn't extra severe, like the stories I hear about? So, and I just went to places of despair that I had never been to before. So, it's strengthened me in the long run. It's an enlightening experience. You so appreciate the smaller things in life. I've always had an appreciation for the smaller things, but now it just illustrated that, how
mhm.
much reliant on the little comforts and the camaraderie of close friends, how much that matters, how precious is every moment, every minute, So yeah. And
You
so it
don't.
changed perspectives. It did.
You look lighter. I don't know how
Well,
to.
because I am
Like you
surrounded
look.
by this white light. I am in the Johnston Historical Society headquarters, which sometimes I come to you from. That's what, hence all these file cabinets and storage units. Um, in some of these drawers behind me, you would find town records and deeds and proclamations from the 1750s.
So
Or
wait,
so.
what is it? It's what historical
I am,
society?
I am at the Johnston, Rhode Island Historical Society.
That's
You know,
cool.
yes, because I can use this for limited periods as my studio. Less distractions here. Otherwise, I'd be at the house where I reside with a tablet and juggling that around, and you don't know who's going to walk in and come in at the time, and I have to talk to for a minute and tell them I'm on a show. So this is more convenient for me because it's only the hour anyway. So, but that's why I look like I'm in this like this records file, this cabinet. It's there are old records, old papers here, and very important to the town of Johnston, Rhode Island.
Mm.
Elise Gianmarco Carlson is the president of the Johnston Historical Society. Very effective president, and so she's into renovating the records around us, and reestablishing the filing system. So
That's awesome. So
we're very busy.
even being in that environment with stuff that old.
Well, it makes me feel not as old because everything's older than me around here, just about. Not every person, but every document is.
I
And
would be like, how do you not just rip open boxes and just start like reading stuff and looking at stuff?
oh no, that's a lot of what we do here. You cannot go through these files and find something that's integral to the history of the town here and not read it, or an old property deed or an old farm about, and then you find out that the people who actually worked that farm and left documents. You have to go rabbit trail. You get sidelined so easily to find these old records, but sometimes you uncover a gem that we didn't know we had that had been filed away for decades.
Right.
Every once in a while that happens because it was at the bottom of a drawer, or hadn't been properly logged. So you do find some fantastic things here. Elise is much more qualified to speak about that because the things she's uncovered here.
I was going to say, well, what do you think is the coolest thing that you guys actually have found?
Probably the records of an article about someone who was killed by lightning, and the whole
Really?
the whole story about them. I can't remember all the details of it, but Elise was looking for that. I reminded her of what it was, and then it all came back to her. But she had found an article that was written for the New York Times, a current article from the 1870s, and it told about this man being struck down by lightning. No, actually, it was older than that. This was from the 1790s. That's what it was from. And she found a current article about that, how the man was killed by lightning. The man's son, he witnessed his son being struck by lightning and killed on a farm. And that was about the most outstanding I can remember, that she just uncovered that. And then she was able to research it because she's a diligent researcher and knows all the avenues of researching. So that was something.
Have you ever come across anything where anybody there's any, like, I'm going to say quote unquote ghost stories in there?
A few here and there, but they're always like a folklore thing. Like there's a lot of tradition, like about Snake Den Park is called such because there used to be an annual festival where the townsmen would hunt the snakes there because it was overrun with rattlesnakes, up until the early 1800s. And they would have an actual snake festival where they'd hunt the snakes and get a bounty on them, and then they celebrate at the local tavern. So people have tried to revive that from time to time, but it never took off because those snakes are gone, the poisonous snakes. Far as ghost lore, there is a hint of a ghost story from time to time, but it usually will have one blurb that says haunted or haunting.
Oh, really?
Strangeness, but they don't elucidate because it wasn't popular to talk about then, unless it was really a story about spiritualism. So yeah, little hints here and there.
Well, that's
This building is not haunted. It probably should be, but it's not. It's not very old. However, on the property owned by the Johnston Historical Society is the Elijah Angel House, and that is haunted.
So where's
We
that located?
If it weren't for the wall here, I could kick a soccer ball to it. It's
And you don't think if there are said spirits in there that they wouldn't come into
the building here, the headquarters.
yeah.
No, they don't seem to follow for some reason. They stay confined. Ghosts usually do that. They stay in their quarters. And they stay, where they belong, where they lived, and perhaps where they died, where most of their lives were associated with. And that would be the Elijah Angel House, which was built circa 1825, named for the owner at the time that was built. And people have seen. What's interesting is that different people at different times corroborated the story of seeing a man with a top hat and dressed in dark clothes in that house. It was just the lore of the house. If that was a story handed down, it wouldn't be so interesting.
Do you guys ever use it? Do you ever use it to do investigations in?
Somewhat. It has a tenant, so we can't do too much. She lives upstairs, but it was. We have done some little probing and investigate, like talking to the spirit. You want to show yourself, and haven't gotten anywhere with it.
No.
Surprisingly, I guess it's surprising, but he won't show himself if we ask. Yes, I just got a message from Elise. Sam is with James, or James is with Sam, and it's well, there was a tenant before. Now that property is owned by the Johnston Historical Society, the old house and the land, the lot, and an original tenant there thought she heard her husband coming down, who was then president of the Johnston Historical Society. She thought he was coming in, and but he was downstairs and she was upstairs. She heard him downstairs, and then she saw a man at the foot of her bed. She just, was retiring for the evening. And there was the man with the top hat. He was sitting on her bed. And so then she realized that was not her husband because he was obviously downstairs. And she said, "Look, this is my place. You go downstairs. Don't stay up here with me." Then he vanished. The man vanished. Okay, that's one ghost story. But then we had a lady. We had an open house 2 years ago. And this lady was telling, "Oh yes, I used to come in here a lot." The building has been used for so many purposes: a hairdressing salon, or school for hairdressing, and a salon, and it's been a school. So the lady was telling, "Oh yes, I used to see a man here. Oh, I saw him once. I saw a man with a top hat and dark clothes." So I was, hosting there, and I said to one of our members, I said, "Could you please ask Elise to come over here because I want her to hear this firsthand." And then there was another woman who came on another occasion when we had open house, and she told the story about a presence there. It was a man with a top hat. So that's what people, and they give me kind of stories. What?
Did you ever find anything in the records that would collaborate this man with the top hat?
Don't know. No, unless that's how Elijah Angel appeared. There are no records of how he looked. There's a drawing of his son, so we think that that is what he might look like. But as far as a man who wore it's of this time. It's the style of the time to wear a top hat,
right.
Black. So maybe that's Elijah Angel himself. We like to think so, but he never speaks and he doesn't identify himself. He has not been seen for years and years. I wouldn't know how to call him forth. I'm not sure that's even a good idea. But we have spoken to him and asked him if he wanted to give us a sign, and don't hear anything from him. Wow. But maybe if we were staying the night, I'd honestly have to screw up my nerve to do that. I would do it, but to stay overnight,
You wouldn't do it? What do you mean?
Well, I would do it. I just have to work up my nerve to do it. I would be.
You would be nervous? What do you mean work up your nerve? You are you're a demonologist. What do you mean work up your nerve?
I have seen a ghost, however you want to term that, 8 times,
Yeah, but why would you have to work up your nerve? You deal with that. This should be nothing.
It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to be, if you're by yourself in a house, in an old house, overnight, and you don't know if you're going to turn around and see the specter. Or you're going to look up and see it, or you're going to close a door with a mirror on it, and you're going to see that reflected in the mirror. It's that element of the unexpected that makes it terrifying. So I would be somewhat apprehensive. Oh, I would want the experience, yes.
Yeah.
But what a sublime moment. That's transcendental. When you're actually scared of something paranormal, you have the chance to reconcile, to know you're looking at a ghost. I've had that experience where I've looked at it, a being, a projection, whatever, and I've had the chance to look at it and say, I'm looking at a ghost. I'm looking at something from the past, an image from the past, especially when that image is aware of me. That's, how do you describe that feeling? It's wonderful. Yeah. It's scary. It stays with you. It stays in your memory. So I would do it. I might.
We would listen. Gina said we would do it in a heartbeat.
Oh, Gina Burson. Well, now if you have 2 or 3 people with you, I wouldn't want a room full of people because that tends to negate results. But if we had a few people, yeah, there'd be no question of nerve for that. You know, I'm talking about a scenario where if I was by myself, it's a little unsettling, a little unnerving to think that you might be at the foot of a stairwell. You might just turn around and you might open a door and I should be so blessed. I should be so lucky.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I would be almost as content to say nothing happened because everybody would expect me being a demonologist.
I honestly, I agree with you. But I've always believed in that, one person should not be, investigate alone. I always feel like you should have somebody with you regardless,
Yes, because if you're just by yourself, which most of my sightings have been when I was by myself, not everyone, but then you're telling a story, and I suppose I have high credibility and people know I'm speaking the truth, but they weren't there and it's not the same thing. So it is to have somebody else with you, and for safety issues too, and to document.
Yeah. I mean, it's good. That all that is I just believe for safety issues and this and that you shouldn't go alone to investigate. I mean, most of the places we investigate they're abandoned, they're ruined, they're old, you could fall, get hurt, so for me it's more, and it's at nighttime, so you have somebody else with you. But I also, I know a lot of the shows, and I only say this because, this is one of the reasons why I started the Brew. So I want to point these things out. Even the shows that sometimes the guys the people, break off and go by themselves. I'm like, that's just not, to me, it's just not a good practice,
What do we see on those shows? We see people walking around with a flashlight by themselves, and the audience forgets. It's, the suspension of disbelief. The audience forgets that there is a cameraman there, or you wouldn't have the teleplay of it. Hey, better late than never. I see Elise is here.
Hi, Elise.
Yeah, she's waving to you. Elise is very busy studying lately. She's taking courses at the Rhine Institute, J.B. Rhine Institute for Further Education, and it's a college-level course. She's given a lot of homework. The professor is Lloyd Arbach, and she's given she and the other students have given a lot of reading, a lot of remembering, and then you have to be creative and write your own essays. So they load it on. Elise says, now I remember why I hated college so much. But she's excelling. She loves it. Challenging.
So for those that don't know, Elise is James and Carl's, I guess, manager.
Yes.
Right.
That's good.
She's also head of the historical society and all that stuff. So Lisa is really cool. We had her on one time. She's always welcome to come on anytime she wants.
We'll do that next time. Yes. I didn't bring her over because she did have, some things to do at home, and she is studying for the finals. Oh yes, it's a comprehensive course. They give final exam, and you have to be up on the material. You can't just invent it.
So, she said handler.
Tamer. Yeah.
So going back to what we were talking about, because it's interesting that you bring that stuff up, because everybody asks me all the time, oh, don't you get scared when you see something? I'm like, well, before I realize what it is, it's over with. So I don't have time to get scared. I'm
no, just what you're saying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've never been able to really like comprehend what I'm seeing before it's over with,
Right.
but if I'm in a room and somebody like a real person could scare me like that. I'll just be like sitting there. If somebody just walked in a room real quickly and I wasn't expecting it, I'll scream.
Oh,
And they go, you ghost hunt. Like, what are you afraid of? I was like, I'm more afraid of real people than I am spirits. So it's just
like John Wayne said, it's the living that worry me.
but
Yep.
another thing,
Well,
but another thing I wanted to touch on, you had said, oh, now I forget it. Damn it.
I'll say
I'll
it again.
remember. Mm. So it was when we were talking about all that stuff. And
About transcendental moments where it really grips you, or was it?
yeah, but we were talking about investigating alone, and then we were talking about why can't I remember it now? All right, never mind. Maybe I'll think about it. I hate when I do this. I think I do it at least once a show.
What's well, yeah. Well, I have an excuse. I have brain fog from COVID, and what's unique about that? It's forgetfulness, of course, and short-term memory, but it feels like it's happening to somebody else. You're in a hypnotized state. One doesn't you befuddle yourself. You do things that you didn't think yourself capable of, like go to roll down my car window and instead put on the directional. I mean, anybody can do that, but you catch yourself like that, trying to remember something you know very well, or lyrics to a song, or even a song title, you just can't. I had that experience today. It's remarkable. It's like, this should be somebody else. This should be something I'm reading about. It shouldn't be me.
Yeah.
Now I find myself in that situation.
I remember what I was going to say.
Say it.
So when you said one of the reasons you had brought up about, as far as documenting and evidence, and if you're there alone and it's just a story.
Well, yeah,
And I understand what you're saying, but like for me, I'm not really trying, like for me, I'm doing this because I've had experiences, I've seen things, I've heard things, I've felt things, I've experienced things that I can't explain. So for me, I'm a believer in that realm of the world, or the universe, whatever you want to
yeah.
call it. So I'm a believer in all that stuff, and the more that I have the diversity on the show of all the people that do all kinds of different things, the more I'm like opening up to the possibility that there are outside of anything else. So for me, it's not really that I'm doing this because I want to convince, my friend Tina over here that ghosts exist. You know what I mean? Because to me, they do. So I'm not doing it to like, you either believe me or you don't. You know me. I'm not going to bullshit it. You know what I mean? So, and I don't care if you don't believe me. Not you. But I'm saying like anybody that's going to,
You will always have people who refuse to believe. They don't want to believe. They're not interested, or they so want to debunk, because that makes them feel rational and grounded and smart. And as I've often observed, a true skeptic, somebody who wants to be known as a skeptic, you get into debate with them, you can't win. It's like debating religion. The skeptic will always get in the last word in any kind of discussion or debate, even if that last word is well. That shows you haven't convinced them, haven't won them over if you're trying to.
Right. I mean, I'm very, very good friends with Kenny Biddle. I mean, I love him. He's like a brother. And I think, for him and I mean, I know I'm never, I already have it in my head, like nothing I do or say is going to convince him otherwise. Right. So I just accept the way he is. I love him. I do go to him for, advice. If somebody sends me something and I can't figure it out, I'll ask him to tell me, on a technical level or whatever it is, like his opinion. But, I'm not going to get upset that he doesn't believe me or doesn't because it doesn't matter. I mean, I think at this point, like knowing Kenny, literally Abraham Lincoln's ghost could come up to him and he'd just be like, oh, maybe I was having a dream or a playback from a movie, so that's okay.
Yeah. Are you saying that Kenny Biddle doesn't even believe in ghosts?
Yeah. No, and that's okay. I love him. I love Kenny, so I don't even care. I don't care.
Do you know what he did to that place we call the Conjuring house? He tore up all the myths and lore surrounding that house. He tore it to shreds by conducting historic research, which Elise has done. Elise has performed extensive research on that house. She underplays it, but she's done a lot of reading up and
Yeah.
deep searching on that house. And and she's blown away a lot of the myths surrounding it, a lot of the lore, Lore. And we need our realists. We need our Kenny Biddle. We need our Elise Gianmarco Carlson. We need people who will, they're not afraid to show a spotlight on something that, and slay the slaughter the sacred cow.
Right.
They're not afraid to do that. And then anything they find that is smacks of the supernatural. To me, I equate the word supernatural with impossible. It just means impossible. But as far as leanings to paranormal, yeah, then they treasure what they get all that much more. If it's shown to be something inexplicable, all right, that's valuable. That's something we've ruled out all other possibilities. But Kenny did a lot of research on that house, as has Elise, and they all come up with this myth that was the movie scenario. Is just that. In order to have a good story, you need to have heroes. You need to have a beginning. Why did things go wrong? Who came in to rescue the family? How was it resolved? That's not always real life. You always have a beginning, but you don't have a definite end. Hmm?
It's TV.
Yeah, TV. Yeah,
and that's what people have to remember. Like, it's the same thing with the shows. Like, it's TV. The movie Ghost was not true. It's TV. They have to have some sort of an entertainment draw. Nobody really is going to watch a TV show. When we investigate, nobody's going to watch that for 5 hours. That's just sitting in the dark, and then eventually talking about what diner we're going to. Nobody's going to watch that. So they have to do stuff to make it interesting, and and I get it, but that's why I started this, because I feel like it gives people that don't know any better the wrong impression of what to do when you investigate and what things that you do, and next thing you know, you have a 13 and 14-year-olds running around in cemeteries telling, oh, if you're here, throw a rock at me, and come get me, and oh, did that just say kill so and so? And it's just like you get the wrong. They're given the wrong impression. Now, if they watch Ghost Nation or Ghost Hunters, I do believe the way they do things are a little bit more grounded and to the level that we do things. But again, they're there for a week. They don't show that part. They show an hour. So people just think that this is what's happening in 1 hour,
We see those shows that perform disservice in the sense that they educate people on the procedures of paranormal investigation. What you accept is genuine for what they capture. That's up, that's everybody must make that decision. Keep in mind, you are seeing a rectangle. You don't see what's happening to the sides or behind the cameras. You have to kind of take their word for it of what's happening. But you will see some bona fide paranormal investigating techniques. But it is presented as an entertainment. I would say to persons, and during lectures, we don't need to go to church anymore for proof of the eternal and proof of the afterlife. How can people debate the existence of spirits and the afterlife when it is proven every Wednesday night on cable TV? You need any proof, just turn on your set and watch the shows. But that's what people accept, because these TV shows have promoted the pseudoscience and the quasi-religion that is known as popular paranormal. It is very real to some people. I enjoy the shows because they show how people investigate. And you can tell a lot about a person, that has a paranormal situation or reports one by the TV shows they prefer.
And it's crazy because like I know, because there was one point when I was with a certain group that I'm not going to mention.
That's nice of you. Courtesy, I call it.
That there was, I think it was Sci-Fi came in because they were going to do a show about
the Sci-Fi.
Yeah, the store that was owned by the director of the group that I'm not going to mention. So it was going to be like, about a ghost hunting story, because that's what it was. And they literally said that my ex at the time, he was my boyfriend, was there with me, and they were going to bring him on, but I was going to be. They put up this whole scenario, this fake story that me and him were boyfriend and girlfriend. We worked together in the store, and I was cheating on him with one of the other guys that worked there, and we were fighting all the time. Like, this totally make up this story and wanted us to like. And I'm like, really? This
Shouldn't
is
it
supposed
be
to
about
be
paranormal? And
right.
that is
I was like, great. Now, so everybody is going to hate me because I'm
okay, you need a vixen. Oh,
yeah,
I
you know,
hate that Karen. Did you see what she did to him? Oh my!
I
Somebody should
know.
tell him.
And it was
Somebody
like
should.
it was like this big, totally made up drama story. And I'm like, wow, they really do that. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, well, well, when I was on Ghost Hunters, they would promote the interpersonal relationships a lot. Like they had to have their heroes, their tough guy, their foil, their court jester. Um, and how people were starting to, romances would develop, little things like that. I really thought it should have been more about paranormal research, not a blatant, like dry study of it, but it should have concentrated, focused on that more, instead of people's reaction to it, to what they supposedly saw, But I know what you're saying about that. They got to promote the drama to it. What's paranormal without drama? Genuine,
Right. And
Um,
that's a shame, right? I mean, it sucks that there's just now I try to stay out of all of it. Like, I don't even know who it's funny because, like, I've had guests on, and it's like I'll get pulled aside and like, you're having that person on? Well, they did this, and this, and this. And I'm like, I had no idea. Like, I try to stay as far out of that as possible. Like, I don't want, I'm not about all that, but there's a couple of I think warranted people that I do not speak with in this field, but I don't speak with them. I don't speak about them. I'm not involved in their lives. There's no drama. You know what I mean? It's just drama happened, and it was like over with, and that's it. So, but you try to I'm just trying to enjoy this ride. That's it.
every time I try to get away from the drama, they keep pulling me back in. There. Oh yeah, I've been controversial. I'm not even sure why. I have been. I think it started because of my association with the Warrens and my falling out with them, which I didn't even know. Usually, these fallings out are something I hear from other people. You know,
So what?
but
So I didn't ever even knew. See, I didn't even know that.
you didn't know I had a falling out with the Warrens, or you didn't know I knew them well.
No, I
Or,
know you knew them well. I just didn't know there was a falling out.
apparently so. Yeah, it must have been. Well, I think I was a little inconvenient for them at times. I kind of knew too much,
Mm.
from behind the scenes, and I think they had to remove themselves from me before I found out more. I believe that was the reason, you know, because I'd seen more than I was supposed to. You see, what I had going for me was I usually wear soft sole black sneakers. Um, I have excellent hearing. I certainly did back then, and decades ago. I had a good memory, and I'm very perceptive. So I knew things that were going around, but I never blew people's cover. You know,
Right.
and that was, partly Ed and Lorraine Warren. I started out with a very good association with them. That kind of went away, and I actually lectured with the Warrens. And it was, they had dinner over at my parents' house a couple of times. But every once in a while, an article would be brought to my attention, like a magazine article one time referred to me. Well, I was into ritual magic at the time, but that was downplayed. I didn't want to talk too much about it. And then this magazine article comes out, you know, uh, about me, and it says he is a born leader. The parents of his friends should be warned. He is a cultist. Like, okay, like that's kind of coming out right and saying it.
Hmm.
And I attended a lecture by my good friends Ed and Lorraine Warren, and well, I was actually pleased that 15 minutes of that lecture was devoted to me. But It was rather inflammatory. They needed something spectacular. It was the 1970s, so they had filmed. I did a demonstration ritual, magic ritual, or uh, it was called Luciferin. Was the avenue of expression.
Hmm.
Not Satanism, though it was related, but I would call it Luciferin. It was my own brand, and they took pictures of me doing the ritual and recorded an interview with me. Boy, that was blazed on the screen. That I wish I could get a copy of that
Really?
because I looked good. I was 17, looked all right. Um, but there were some dramatic pictures, and but then they went on this campaign like, this is out there. He is, you must be wary of him. I said, silly business. There was this show, the David Susskind show. There was David Susskind, then there was Phil Donahue, and then Dick Cavett and successive interviewers. But a lot of people don't remember David Susskind now. He was a major news, and talk show host.
Hmm.
Uh, that was Tom Snyder after him, and like the Tomorrow Show. But a precursor to the Tomorrow Show was the David Susskind show. And I got a call from friends of mine in Foster, Rhode Island, the Morgans, and they called me. He said, "Are you near a television? You should turn this on." I said, "Oh, why?" He said, "Well, Ed and Lorraine Warren are on television." I said, "Oh, yeah, I'll turn them on." But they're talking about you. Their whole interview is about you,
Oh my gosh.
about me, And I said, "Well, really? I didn't think I was that interesting a focal point." They said, "It's not good." They are warning people about you and telling them you're a Satanist and all that, and that you sacrifice animals because that's what Satanists do. I remember when I did that demonstration ceremony for Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they were taking pictures. They had a reporter there with them. Ed said, "So where's your animal?" And I said, "Well, the beagle's upstairs." He said, "No, your sacrifice." "That's my sacrifice?" "Yeah, the animal you sacrifice." I said, I don't do that. I rescue animals. I don't do that.
Right.
He said, "Okay, and where's your dagger?" He meant Athame. "Where's your dagger?" And I said, "Oh, I have a hunting knife. I don't have a dagger." He said, "For the bloodletting." I said, I don't do that either. So he was hoping for something more dramatic than he got. So he overplayed it. I did have a skull, had a human skull,
Hmm. Which is
which
cool.
it was, it was very, very cool. It was, part of my ritual chamber.
There
That
wasn't
one,
any energy attached to that?
there wasn't any what, please?
Like, all right,
It was,
energy?
oh, I'm sure there was, but only because it was associational. I mean, I never felt any bad emanations, strangeness coming from the skull. It was just a cool prop for my ritual chamber. There is a very dramatic picture of me in his slideshow, or there was, that shows me holding that skull above a girl's head, and she's like an acolyte, an attractive young lady. She's kneeling, wearing a black robe and kneeling in front of me. So it was a pretty, impressive visually ritual. Um, that skull disappeared, and it's hard to lose a skull, but it disappeared from my, where I had the ritual chamber set up. And lo and behold, every time you see a special on the Warrens Occult Museum,
Hmm.
you see that skull. It's there. When they show the human skull, that was mine. I mean, not the one I'm wearing now, but it was that was my human skull. And several other items mysteriously vanished. Well, we have to think that's apportation, or the because they wouldn't take anything, would they? Well, that's where it ended up in the ritual. I mean, their occult museum. So it's not that I would, had terribly bad relations with the Warrens. It's just that they were rather exploitative at the time. I was naive, and but I did have good moments with the Warrens. You had to like Ed and Lorraine Warren if you knew them and you saw them lecture. There's one scene, well, many scenes in the movie The Conjuring, but there's one scene in particular that accurately depicts Ed and Lorraine Warren and shows how charming they could be. Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson playing, respectively, Lorraine and Ed Warren. They show them lecturing at a hall that looks like a college
Right.
hall, and they're bantering and they're answering questions. And you see a cameo of the elegant Lorraine Warren the real Lorraine
Oh
Warren.
yeah.
And so they're saying, so what do most of your ghost hunters, what do most people call you? And Ed Warren says, kooks, you know? And they had this banter between them. There's this almost like a routine. Like, Ed, did you bring that cable? Did you bring that microphone? You said you'd bring it. Oh, you packed it, Lorraine. You like them, this charismatic couple. You wanted them to go on lecturing. You wanted to see more. And they
Right.
did some very chilling pictures and audio recordings. So that's very accurate of how Ed and Lorraine were, if you see that scene. You know, what was not accurate is them coming in and trying to debunk and get to the root of a haunting. Like, is this genuine or not? Now,
Mhm.
when we conducted that, I mean, it was a group based at Rhode Island College in Providence. And when our team was conducting the original investigation of that house in Harrisville, later known as the Conjuring house, we were, to the best of our means, we were conducting a scientific investigation. We were taking readings, measurements, photographs. When Ed and Lorraine became involved in that case, which they learned of from us, they weren't conducting an investigation. It was an intervention, an intercession. They were convinced that the house was haunted by a demon witch, and that's how they addressed it. They even held an ill-advised seance in the house, and which went wrong. So we had different methodologies, different approaches. But I have to say, I enjoyed working with the Warrens. It was a time of my life, a formative time. You know, I remember it fondly. I have no ill feeling against Ed and Lorraine. One member of this team, the lady who was our case manager, she is resentful because she says the Warrens stole our case. To me, yeah, that was nearly 50 years ago, and I'm just not affected by it. I wasn't really at the time either. It just
Mhm.
came and went. You know, we didn't know it was going to be subject of a major motion picture 40 years later. You know, but I just don't have no. I don't know. I'm just have no ill feeling about it. You know,
Right.
if anything, I'm nostalgic. When I saw the movie The Conjuring, at my brother's behest, at the 40th anniversary of our investigation and the Warrens' intercession, my brother urged me and our fellow members of this team at Rhode Island College, whoever you could get in touch with, to come and see the movie. I said, "Well, Keith, it's not going to be my brother. You know, it's not going to be real, and I don't know if I'm interested in sitting there for 2 hours." I thoroughly enjoyed that movie.
It
It
was a
was
good movie.
it was a good movie. It was effective. It wasn't a lot of it wasn't real, but that's a movie. Most of it wasn't real, but some of the sets, like the interior of the house, were just like the house was inside. It just kind of felt nice to watch, to know that movie never would have happened if it weren't for me.
Well,
And
so that was the thing I was thinking, like, and I know this is a movie part, but in the movie, they show them being approached by the family after,
yes,
some lecture, right? But
yes,
really, I mean, I guess, did you guys reach out? I mean, how did they get involved initially?
I'll tell you in a nutshell the true story. And I remember an author once said, uh, "Truth is stranger, but not nearly so palatable as is fiction." People want their fiction; they're not going to accept it. You know, nobody wants to hear. Well, a few people want to hear what's real and what's not real in that realm. But what happened was, my brother, when we were members of this team, it was Pyro, Parapsychology Investigatory and Research Organization, based at Rhode Island College. I
Mhm.
attended a lecture given by Ed and Lorraine at Rhode Island College, and I actually got up I was called up to speak some, question and answers. Ed said, "Come up here, young man." So I was invited that night to join Pyro, to join that group. Naturally, my brother was as well. Um, so as a team, we were investigating exterior settings, and we wanted to get into residential cases where we actually go into houses,
Mhm.
maybe assisting people getting to the bottom of what, caused their haunting. To that effect, my brother placed an ad in a local periodical, the North County Observer. My brother placed an ad advertising the existence of Pyro, the group at Rhode Island College. 3 weeks to the day later, that ad was answered by one who responded was a Mrs. Carolyn Perrin. She and her husband Roger had been in this house for a little over 2 years. They were experiencing strange things. They wanted a paranormal team to come in and investigate. So we responded to her, invited her to the college for a conference, and we went to their home. So, and there was pronounced activity that first day we were there. So we're like, now we're doing it. Now we're investigating a house. So we were with that for a few weeks. We came back, and what a dramatic change in Mrs. Perrin, Carolyn Perrin. She seemed like the house was absorbing her. She was already a slender woman, but she just looked rather haggard and drawn out. Well, I bonded with Carolyn. I seemed to be her confidant because she was calling me 3 to 10 times a day, every day, telling me about the new activity in their house because I was listening and I was taking notes. We decided as a team, I think it was actually my brother who conceived, actually, I know it was my brother who conceived of the idea, to contact Ed and Lorraine Warren, with whom we were acquainted. At no time did we feel we were in over our heads. Now, we were having a good time with this investigation. We were making progress. We thought it might be nice to consult Ed and Lorraine Warren and benefit from their vast experience. So we spoke with the Warrens on the phone. I remember being on the phone with Ed Warren. He volunteered to come to the house and be part of they as a couple.
What do you think were some of the things that maybe that you told him were going on that would make him say, okay, we're going to come check this out? Because I assume they would get, I assume they would get a lot of calls from a lot of people.
Well, what distinguished this house? What made them want to come in particular?
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, they knew if I was in on it, it had to be something good. But there was a shadow presence. You could call it a shadow person, as a type of spirit or phenomenon. But this was not in the shape of a person. It would move around the house. It was a darkness. We documented that. It still happens to this day. People see a dark mass moving through that house, and it doesn't go through walls. It seeks egresses like the stairwell and from a well in the basement, issues up from there. It's a blackness we can't quite explain. It's a dimensional rift, I think. So I told Ed about that. There's a black thing that travels around. I was the first one to see it in that house, and even the family had not seen that before. So I told Ed about that, and I think that was the grab when I told him about the black thing, because he knew, I had that veracity. He knew I was reporting accurately. And I said, oh, there's a window that was jarred open and it slammed shut when my brother said the name of Jesus, and other strange things happening there. So that was, I wasn't trying to sell him on it. Ed Warren just asked me what was happening there. I could hear Lorraine in the background. So Ed volunteered to come there. I said, oh, how good does this get? Now we have the Warrens coming here.
Right.
Help us. Not that we needed it, but it was a good thing. And I remember being on the phone with Ed and saying, now I understand we're going to be working together in this investigation. Ed said, oh, absolutely. So would you like our case files? Mail them right to me. Okay, now this was August 1973 when we started investigating. Now we're into mid-September 1973. The movie is set in 1971, but it was actually 1973 when these events transpired. I remember greeting Ed and Lorraine when they pulled up the driveway. I helped to give the tour of the house, and that was just a good day. And here we are, our team, we're getting someplace. These people rely on us, they trust us. We have Ed and Lorraine here. What could be better? This is going places. Well, after that introduction, which Lorraine Warren would later claim that never happened, that they were the sole, and I quote, we were the sole paranormal investigators in that house at that time. And she also said that movie is as true to real life as any movie could possibly be. Well, there's photographic evidence, besides memory, besides audio recordings, there's photographic evidence that I and the team were there at that time when the Warrens were.
Right.
Carolyn Perrin ceased calling me. I stopped hearing from her. So we had a meeting at Rhode Island College. We determined either the Warrens are making real progress and it's a serious investigation and they don't want us there, or maybe the case has been resolved. Whatever scenario, we're not hearing from the Perrins anymore. So we'll just write it out. Okay, 16 days later, after the Warrens were introduced to that house, I did receive a call back from Carolyn Perrin. She apologized for having been out of touch. She told me that the Warrens advised her and her husband that they had to be the sole paranormal investigators on the scene or they could do no good. Said we were a bunch of college kids were just going to get in the way. Now I can understand that the Warrens feeling that way, and I can understand the parents accepting that. But that was the end of our involvement with the Perrin case, and it culminated with a séance on Devil's Night, October 30th, 1973, conducted in the house, which went very wrong from what I heard. I wasn't there for it, but I heard that Mrs. Perrin, Carolyn, was flung out of her chair. She went into a fit of temporal possession, and she was transient possession, you would call it, and her body was flung out of the chair. And her husband, who didn't like the idea of conducting a seance in his house, Roger went over to help his wife because they thought she was dead on the floor. And Roger went over to help her. And Ed Warren stood there and kind of blocked his way and said, "You must never touch the possessed." Not a good thing to say at that time. So Roger Perrin actually punched Ed in the face. Later on, he said, "I think Ed lost that tooth." It was just a bad ending. It was a dramatic time, but it didn't end successfully. And that was, at that point, Roger Perrin was fed up with paranormal groups coming into the house. So if you want the real story, that's basically it. And I don't mean this is defamatory to the Warrens at all. They were doing their thing as they believed they should be doing anyway, to their best. But I think it was kind of chaotic to set up a seance in the house. I do think that was sensationalizing. Why do a seance? What are you going to hear from a possessed person or a spirit that you can rely on?
Right.
Very, very subjective.
Right. So how long? So then you just lost touch with the case, but then was that the only time that you really worked with them, or?
I lectured with them 3 times. I was part of their lecture. And I think that had to stop because I was, you might say I was catching on. And this has nothing to do with hubris or self-importance. I was catching on and, people wanted to see, when are you lecturing with that Carl again? So, and I thought we were all part of a nice team. I thought that was a very charismatic package.
Right.
Me speaking with the Warrens. The Warrens didn't need me. I mean, they were already very successful, but I thought I was becoming part of it. So I lectured with them 3 times. It was going to lead to investigating with them. Oh, we did that one day and night. We did investigate the house in Harrisville with Ed and Lorraine Warren. So I can say I did investigate with Ed and Lorraine.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a pleasure. It really was.
Yeah.
So again, in contrast, we were different from the Warrens. I'm not saying they were totally wrong. It's just they did usurp our case, and I think that was quite deliberate. But it was the time. We had other cases to deal with, in times to come.
Right. Somebody asked, Jocelyn, have you gone back to the house?
Frequently, yes. I haven't been there this year only because I was ill, but I've been there literally dozens of times since. I mean, I didn't go back there for some years, but then when the successive owner, Norma Sutcliffe, and her husband, Jerry, owned the house, I was invited back. And actually, my brother's team, near New England Anomalies Research, I was a member, we investigated there. And my brother got what we would call a Class A EVP, electronic voice phenomena, which we think are spirit voices. He was going up the stairwell. My brother was recording with his cassette recorder. He calls Old Faithful, gets good results. Played back the recording. What did we hear? A disembodied voice says, "We're still here."
Mm.
And I was making a joke, like, Norma asked, "Well, where's your other investigator?" I said, "Oh, he's down in the basement. He's probably relieving himself down there." My brother plays back the recording. I said, "Here's my joke." And the voice says, "Don't lie."
Really?
I've been there as a guest of the new owners. They had the closing on their house. June will make 2 years, 2 years ago. Corey and Jen Heinzen, splendid people. Wouldn't make up anything, wouldn't fake anything. They don't need to there anyway, but they would not. They're just wonderful friends and splendid people. And I've been there many times, as has Elise Carlson. She's been back there. She actually, like I mentioned, Elise has done immense research on that house,
Right.
but very objective research. She's not looking for the ghost. She's
Right.
not. If she's searching for any caveat, it's what didn't happen there.
Mm-hmm.
No, the Mrs. Arnold did not hang herself in that house. There was a death in that house that might have been a suicide, but it was a man. And, just things, nobody hanged themselves. A 90-year-old woman did not hang herself in the barn. Nobody froze to death in that barn. It's just so much. So Bathsheba Sherman, Thayer Sherman was not a demon witch. She did not stick pins into the heads of babies. All this is part of the lore of the Conjuring house. She was a totally innocuous person. She was a neighbor, but that name came up. The parents' dog, when they resided in Cumberland just before they moved to Harrisville, Rhode Island, the dog's name was Bathsheba.
Oh, really?
And Karen finds in the town's record there's this Bathsheba Sherman. She has an hypnagogic experience, like a waking dream. I think it was that this witch is after her, says, "I'll drive you out with death and gloom. I'll drive you out with fiery brooms. You'll try to flee, but it will be too late. You'll be dead." Now, that was Carolyn's experience that she reported it. I wasn't there for it. I just tend to think it was a product of her mind. It makes much more sense because you can't back that up with any history or any photographic audio evidence. There was nothing wrong with this personage of Bathsheba Thayer Sherman. She was just a woman who lived in the neighborhood, probably had visited the house. But then she gets turned into this witch by Lorraine Warren and Carolyn's, experience. But then Lorraine Warren was a clairvoyant. She has this psychic vision. Don't dare to argue with it because that's offending, the Warrens. She had this clairvoyant vision that Bathsheba Sherman was haunting the house. There you have the demon witch. There you have somebody that puts the family in danger. There you have who the Warrens need to drive out of the house.
Where did they get the name Bathsheba from?
Well, there was a real Bathsheba Sherman. It was not that uncommon a name in the 19th century. There was a preponderance of people naming their children biblical names.
Gotcha.
Well, still get John and Sarah now, but lesser known biblical names, Bathsheba, who King David took as his wife. And, so they had a dog named Bathsheba before they moved to Harrisville. Coincidence? I think not. But nowadays, it's kind of an exotic sounding name. So the witch, the demon witch, Bathsheba. Again, I always have to put that disclaimer. I am not on any campaign against Ed and Lorraine Warren. I enjoyed knowing them. I learned some things from them.
Right.
How could you not? But as far as the actual facts, the events that transpired in that house, that was the sequence. That's what happened there. Yes, the house was and is haunted. So is my parents' house. It didn't drive us out.
Right.
It was interesting. Most days growing up at my parents' house in North Scituate, Rhode Island, most days were business as usual. And you could forget that there were haunted activity. But sometimes it would strike, and it could be pretty dramatic. Thus it was with the house in Harrisville. Mm-hmm. Most business as usual. Well, a lot of days they had strange things going on, but it didn't drive them out. The parents owned and occupied that house for 10 years, and it was a happy time for them.
Now, have you talked to Andrea? I mean, I know she's been more and more out into the paranormal field and everything with all the going to the events. I personally have never met her, but
I think you'll have to like her if you do.
Huh?
I think I would expect you would like Andrea Perrin if you meet her.
Well, I was just saying, a lot of my friends have met her and like her. They think she's awesome. So I've never personally talked to her or, met her or anything like that. But I was just curious to see, like, if you guys talked since,
Oh, sure. I would see Andrea at the Ocean State Paracon put on by researcher Ken DaCosta of Rise Up Paranormal. It was an annual event. Couldn't have it because of COVID last year. But that was a hobnobber, a get together, networking forum. It was nice, and I would always see Andrea there. Always the hottest weekend of July for some reason, and so it was sweat making, but you could go into the auditorium to cool off. It was air conditioned, and so it was. Yeah, I would always see Andrea there, and it was held in Harrisville, and the Assembly Theater and the grounds there. Yeah, I'd see Andrea there, and I'd see you sometimes. We'd have dinner together, not just her and me, but the group together at local restaurants. And yeah, I'd see Andrea. It's always good to see her. What does she?
Does she remember the involvement? You know what I mean? Like, does she remember?
Yes, but sometimes differently. The story that she would tell, that her mother would tell, and then Andrea would tell, with the way we all got to know each other was we were driving around. I say we, our group at Rhode Island College, Pyro. We were driving around and we stopped at their house because we thought it looked cool and asked if it was haunted. And Carolyn Perrin said, "Why, yes, in fact, we are. Come on in." It's not the way it happened. That's faulty memory. Carolyn Perrin responded to our ad, and that's how we got to know them. Right. That may be a minor point, because we did get to know them. And the Warrens didn't just show up there either. The Warrens heard we were on to something good, so they were already the cavalry. Yeah, it's good to see Andrea, though. It's reconnecting. I mean to visit. I mean to see more of her, to go down to Georgia and actually visit her father, Roger. Oh, what a character! What a splendid man. In Florida, but months turn into years, and we don't do it. It's like that. But yeah, if you get the chance to meet Andrea, I would recommend it. She's written a book in a series of 3 books, House of Darkness, House of Light. It's titled that because it wasn't just a house of horror. They had warm and good times there. House of Horror, House of Light,
Yeah, I know. I haven't had a chance. So I know people that have read the book. Like I said, but I'm not a reader. You know what I mean? I'm more of a visual person. So the movie makes sense to me as opposed to...
Movies tend to be more fun, yeah. And as long as reading.
Yeah. So...
Did I tell you the story? I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. Did
I tell you the story about the mirror in that house? They call it the house on Round Top, or the farm on Round Top.
Oh, yeah.
The owners are like kind of jaded with having to say the Conjuring house.
So they call it that. Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't like to say the Conjuring house just because of the movie. It was not always the Conjuring house. When I went there, I was invited by Jen and Corey, the current owners, when they had the closing of the house. And that same day in June of 2019, they invited me to come over. And it was 2019, wasn't it? Yeah. Yes, I think. Or am I a year off? But we went to the house. Elise and I went to that house, and I wanted to show her the house and introduce her to the homeowners. And they've since become good friends, and she's done a lot of research on that house. Well, I went into the house, and there was a mirror there, rectangular, rather large mirror. And I said, "Oh my, I think that's the mirror that was there when the Perrins owned this house. I recognize that mirror." So I went up and looked in the mirror. This is true. What can I tell you? It was my experience. I saw myself in my reflection as I looked when I was 18 years of age. Mm-hmm. It startled me. It wasn't the lighting. It was the mirror, the reflection. I wasn't hallucinating. It wasn't wishful thinking. Mm-hmm. I had my red polo shirt that I was wearing that day, but my hair was shoulder length. My face was younger. And I'm looking at myself, and I moved. My reflection is moving with me. Held up my hand. I could see my hand. But I'm 18 years old again.
That's weird.
I started to call for people, and Nah, when they come in here, it's going to stop. I just know it. They won't see it. I'm just going to memorize this. Know it's real to me. I am really seeing this objectively with my own vision. I'm seeing this, and I am going to memorize it. I'm not imagining this. What a bummer it was, when I went into the bathroom, they have a big mirror in there, and I see oh, now I see the change. So, but now it was like more than a movie. It's like it wasn't a whole movie. I was looking at myself, live action, when I was 18 years old. I can't understand that. I know Carolyn Perrin reported having time slippages in the house where she saw into the past. Saw people dressed in vintage, like old-fashioned clothing, and the people sitting at the table with tankards and old-fashioned clothes looked at Carolyn, and she looked at them. For a moment, Carolyn Perrin was the ghost to them. These people, because I believe that was a real experience, because I had my own there.
Right.
And again, it's a lonely thing because nobody else saw it. Elise didn't see it. The Corey and Jen didn't see it. But Mike Ricksecker, author, he has his own show. He came there, with me, and he was trying to see if he could get the same effect, but his features blurred and distorted and altered. Something changed in the face of his reflection. He didn't get younger. He just looked like somebody else.
Oh.
Mirror, mirror on the wall. So if you get there, look in that mirror. You might get a pleasant surprise. I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe I might look like somebody really hot. I'll take a picture of it.
Like you don't now.
Right. No, thank you.
Yeah. You might look like a younger, hot-looking Taryn. I don't know. It might age you. I don't know what it's going to do to you.
Oh, we don't need that.
Oh, I wouldn't want to go back there if it did that to me, because I'm already getting there. It's like to see that. Yeah, but I just look young. The house remembered me. That's what I think. They tell me
that's an interesting thought. That's an interesting thought for sure.
When Carl goes there, strange things happen. You start getting more bangings on the wall, or, not to flatter myself, but the house flatters me because I think it remembers me.
Aww.
In a good way. In a good way.
Good.
Because I never did any bad things there, So, and generally, the story is that if you go there with good intentions and you're, just happy to be there, you'll have a good experience. You'll get some haunted activity you can observe. You'll have a good experience.
Good, noted.
If you don't, you'll just feel sick to your stomach, and you won't. If you come there with, like, oh, I want to, tell how I want to debunk this house, or I want to, use it somehow, then you won't have a good experience. Or if your attitude is negative, you kind of feel sick to your stomach, and you won't want to stay there. Time and time again, that's been supported. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Because generally,
come on, you generally what do?
Well, I was gonna say that's for me is the rule of thumb. Like if I'm scheduled for an investigation or to do something like that, and if I feel anything, I want to say negative. I mean, just like it could be I got in a fight with somebody, you know what I mean, and I'm just in a bad mood. I generally tend to try to, stay away from doing any investigating or anything like that if I'm not in the right.
Sensitive, empathic, you're a receiver and a sender. Yeah, it's going to affect the environment around you. Then you might not even notice it at first, but everybody picks up on your emotions.
Oh, for sure. 1,000%.
Sensitive that way. Like there's in Star Trek: The Next Generation, they introduced a concept. It's an illness that Vulcans, unique to Vulcans. Vulcans divest emotion and suppress their emotions. They're run totally by logic. But Vulcans it's very rare, but they have something that's tantamount to Alzheimer's disease in humans. They have Bendai syndrome. And what happens is they lose control of their emotion. They can't suppress their emotions as they did. And it's always fatal, always degenerative. And what happens is that Vulcans are so psychic, that they start projecting their emotions on their chaotic emotions. And it causes all kinds of chaos and mayhem around because it affects people around them. The crew of the Enterprise was being affected by it because Sarek, Mr. Spock's father, was suffering from Bendai syndrome. and he was in denial of it, of course. So it is with psychics. You tend to broadcast more than the average person might. I think probably everybody has some degree of psychic ability.
Right.
But if you're like that and you come and you just don't feel right, hey, things could get interesting. You might get everybody fighting in
True.
the house. Yeah. Like demonic situations, when a demonic entity visits a home or takes root there, quarreling tends to arise that wasn't there before. People are at each other as they were not before. And I've never felt any insidious or demonic presence in the house in Harrisville. It's just not there. It's spooky because there's the element of the unexpected. But I never felt anything negative or evil there.
Right.
It just is. I think the house is the haunting. People have resided in that house since, well, it was built in 1736. There have been births and deaths there. A lot of history in the U.S. happened. It's, of course, built on Indian burial ground because, as Elise observed, the United States is pretty much Indian burial ground. And, there was some of the staging for King Philip's War in 1671. So it was called the outland because it was apart from that 7-mile radius of what they thought was, settled and civilized. You're kind of on your own once you pass 7 miles from Providence.
Right.
So, it's bound. And I think there's high concentrations of quartz and lime in the soil underneath the ground. And there are a lot of reasons why that place could be haunted. Why are some old houses haunted and some aren't? I don't know. But it's not the tragedies. There are no real tragic events documented there.
Right.
It's just the house is the haunting. The house has been there for so long, it's taken on an evanescent life of its own, I think.
Yeah, I say that all the time. The house doesn't have to be, this old decrepit, 200-year-old house. It could be the land. It could be something inside the house. That something. It could be one of the people that are living in the house. Like it could be, it could be anything.
Around there are factors we'll probably never be able to fully analyze, but you can have suppositions, and you can say the house has been there so long. Yeah, there are creeks and brooks that run through the property. Perhaps they're on just that. The confluence of two brooks can, set up an electric charge because you get where they meet, you get double the charge of water, the impact. So maybe that creates a psychic battery. There's an old cemetery on the land, and
Right.
it was kind of forgotten for a while. Elise has researched that, and I think that's where a giant was buried. Giants' remains were found there, like an 8-foot tall human specimen.
Oh my gosh, it could have been a Bigfoot's.
Well, who knows? Yeah. Do you believe in those things?
I don't.
Yeah, because you'll be controversial. However you comment on Bigfoot, there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with you.
Yeah, well, but I don't think the people that do believe in it are crazy, and I don't think that the people that have experienced things don't believe they didn't experience it. I think
Right.
I believe that the people that have experienced things really believe they did have those experiences, and
Fabricating, they're not making
yeah,
it up.
I think that, it's same thing with aliens. And, do I think we're the only species in this universe or then beyond? No, I don't. But do I think they're little green men with big black eyes and, want to probe us? No. If there are, then.
Well, these scenarios give us answers. They fill in the blanks. That's that missing puzzle piece. Doesn't matter so much if they're real. It gives you that answer.
Well, let me say this though. I mean, I know that there are people that have had those experiences, and I don't. Again, take like Travis Walton for example.
Yes.
I'm not saying that I don't believe what he went through.
I'll say I don't believe what he went through.
But he went through something. He went through something.
He went through something dramatic.
Yeah. So whether or not we have to label that as such, because we're humans. I always say this all the time. We always have to have like a label for everything.
Yeah, we don't like mysteries. We don't like vacuums as a species. We want to solve the puzzle. We like mysteries if we have an answer at the end. So, Taryn, what is your reason for disliking Bigfoot? Why
Oh, I don't dislike Bigfoots.
is hate too strong a word? Then you hate Bigfoot. You dislike it. Do not, do not believe in Bigfoot. All right, it's on the record now. Okay, now you've alienated half your listeners. No, I'll tell you my take on Bigfoot is I used to be a Bigfoot researcher. You know, we had a team. We would go out on expeditions. We saw some surprisingly convincing evidence and had a scary experience once. But my attitude about UFOs and Bigfoot now, it's gotten to the point like, I don't, oh, hi. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't, because it's been too long since I've seen anything or heard something. And I call Bigfoot and the Sasquatch, I offend all parties because I call that the modern myth. Modern myth. Elise just posted. You heard it here first, folks. Taryn hates Bigfoot. You know, we can't suppress that now. No matter how we disclaim it and say we were joking, that's out there now. Some people are gonna. You watch some of this social media now. Now
Yeah,
it's a modern myth. And that doesn't say it doesn't exist. I think something does. But all myth was at one time embraced as reality. Unless it's like Dr. Seuss or something, but all standard myths, crystallized myth was once accepted as reality. The gods of ancient Egypt, the Grecian gods, the pantheon of gods in Rome, all thought to be real, all very just accepted. Then it becomes myth. H.P. Lovecraft said I think how he was very verbose. H.P. Lovecraft said, the essential difference between mythology and theology resides in one's degree of acceptance. That is, to what degree one embraces one or the other.
Right.
So if you believe in it, it's theology. You dismiss it as mythology, and theology becomes mythology. So it is with Bigfoot. Yeah, I think there's a reality behind it. No one's ever going to capture a specimen. But
wait, this whole 8-foot skeleton thing could be a Bigfoot's.
He could be something related. There was in Russia, in Siberia, there was in the 19th century, well documented. There was actually, it's known that she was real. There was something that seemed to be kind of a primitive human. Her name was Zena. And she was captured, and she would get loose every once in a while. They recapture her.
She would get loose?
You would get loose, but after a while she gave up trying because they'd always bring her back. She was supposedly very strong, very large, and ferocious looking. Now, what sets her apart is that she was talked about in living memory up until the 1960s. And her ancestors are alive now. Her great-grandchildren are among us. And her son, they could never find her grave. But her son, his name was Veit, and he was, his grave was exhumed and his skull preserved. And it don't look modern. It looks like what you'd call an archaic Homo sapiens.
Okay, but you think about like 200 years from now, right?
Yes.
Somebody finds Andrea the Giant's bones.
Yeah, there you go. But
or what about like Michael Jordan or Shaq?
A trained archaeologist could tell that they were a human with a pituitary anomaly, abnormality. You could tell it was a human being, not precursor to the, not a primitive human. Andrea the Giant, though, that would be, you'd have to debate about him. You'd have to debate him if you didn't know better. But Veit was supposedly titanically strong and very tall. And you look at his pictures, there are photographs of him, at least one photograph. It's eerie to see his skull and his face is photographed and posed over. Eerie. You don't look like a normal Siberian. There's something different about him.
Hmm.
Now, there was extensive DNA. The lead researcher in this at the time was Igor Burtsev, who I've met and spoken with at length. Igor Burtsev, Russian scientist, and Dr. Igor Burtsev, and he wanted to believe that Vit was a hybrid, or like partly, the son of somebody who was actually a type of pre-human. Well, extensive DNA testing was doing on Zaina's descendants, her grandchildren and great grandchildren, and Vit's skull analyzed, as one of his molars excised and ground into powder, DNA analysis. Well, lo and behold, it turned out that Zaina was African American, sub-Saharan African. No, I mean not American, Russian, sub-Saharan African.
Oh my gosh, I'm 0.01% that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and he was. So he was. When you look at him, he has wide nostrils. He has kind of negroid features. There was a slave trade in Siberia. Some slavery was, the Africans were brought to Siberia. Now, she was not a normal person, but she was genetically sound. She was a human being. It was just she was a different kind of human being. I mean, we don't know why she never was able to speak, why she could outrun any man or outswim any man, and climb trees rapidly. She bore children, obviously, because the men in the village just wouldn't leave her alone.
Really?
She would not wear clothing. She'd always tear up her dress, and she wouldn't wear that. She liked the cold. She had one offspring, at least, that died because she tried to bathe it in cold water, and it succumbed. But she was a real person. I would like to have seen her because they describe her as like not a normal human being. Genetically, she seemed to be.
Wow.
See how we get? That's what's so much fun about paranormal research. You can be talking about a haunted house and then segue right into Bigfoot, and you don't know how seamlessly we did that.
Yeah, and then even last week I had this guy that Justin Bamforth, he does research on Men in Black, and that was like very interesting. And we were listening to phone calls that were recorded, of his case studies, and it's just I feel like it's all connected somehow.
Yes, Men in Black.
Whatever the unknown phenomena is, ranging from ghosts to Bigfoots to Chupacabra to aliens, and everything that all this stuff that's out there. I feel like somehow it's all connected somewhere.
You're looking for a unified field theory. Yes,
I believe it.
Yes, I have a theory about the power particle, but it would take a while to explain it.
There's a question.
It's not supported by advanced computations. So what about people being haunted? People being haunted. Any thoughts? Yeah, just like a dwelling place can be haunted, the human mind is a remarkable development. Sometimes people seem to be prone to be haunted. I mean, I think people should have free will and have the choice over whether they are haunted, if they invite this in, if they let it take root. Sometimes a spirit, a ghost, whatever you want to call it, follows people, seems involved with a certain person. Yeah, some people, they have it. They're haunted somehow. We don't know how it started. James and I, with Duo Daemonology, we take the psychological approach. We try to look for something that disrupted the normal flow of life. Was there a trauma? Was there something that went wrong with that person, or some division that affected their minds? And there's PTSD, and is there something that transpired that brought in this phenomena? If it's demonic, yes, there is. Something happened. Something went wrong. But yeah, I think people can be haunted, and it doesn't make any sense because people shouldn't be able to be haunted. I think the
Well, I was
person.
gonna say, like, wouldn't you say that's not being haunted? Maybe they're just sensitive and they pick up on spirit energy, or things
Yeah,
like that.
if somebody is particularly sensitive, they're going to be more aware of it than the average person would be. So that could be a haunted person, especially if it's surrounded by one particular presence. I believe people have, they may not think they do, but they have the power to throw it off. If they don't want it, they can break the connection and shut it off. They may be convinced they can't, but they can stop that presence. They can shut it off. They can stop being a haunted person. I think
Mhm.
it's a volitional thing. But many people don't want to be divested of their ghost, of their haunting, their companion, their spiritual companion. In fact, most people that I've encountered that report a haunting, they don't want to lose their ghost. They don't want to lose their haunting. They may say they don't like it, but in a lot of cases, what would they do without it? Keeps things interesting. They may not want it to bother them, but what would they do without their precious ghost?
Mike said, and oh wait, and attachments.
Attachments. I don't overrate
That's a good
attachments.
thing.
Yeah, attachment's not always a bad thing. If you're paying too much attention to them, yeah. If they're distracting you from normal productivity, yeah, you don't want an attachment around. You don't want the attachment that you see in the rearview mirror when you're driving. You don't want the attachment that you see hovering above you, all of which I've heard reported. Like when you're trying to get a good night's sleep. Attachment's not always a bad thing.
I don't think I would want to look up in my rearview mirror and see some person sitting in my back seat.
I've heard of that happening.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that. I'd probably get in an accident.
Well, yeah, but these things, as frightening as that may sound, they are quasi-real. They're not solid people. If it's an attachment, you can if you feel you have an attachment of spirit that's following you, influencing you somehow, or wants your attention, you can diminish it. Start by saying, if this is a formula to use, start by saying, I don't want you. You're bothering me. Go in peace. Say a prayer along with it. Go in peace. Remove yourself from me. Oh, it won't work right away, but you'll lessen it. You'll nullify its influence. You don't want the haunting. And then find distractions. Don't pay attention to it. Don't try to force it out of your mind, but just like, you again, and go on to what else you're doing. That thing will go away after a while. I've had activity come back with me after a paranormal investigation, depending on the nature of the haunting, but it was never as strong as the source. They go away after a while. Maybe I've been fortunate that they've gone away after a while.
Yeah, my friend Mike said that he's had several. I think attachments is what he means,
Yeah.
and he said it's a good thing. Helps him connect with other spirits.
Positive attitude. He doesn't want to just get rid of his gift and rid of that communication. It's networking with the spirits. You're finding out more. You're learning more. I mean, some people can't handle it. Some people don't want the attachment.
And then somebody else is agreeing. Yes, Carl, it was like my experiences.
I know about her experiences. That is my friend Ajang, and
Oh yeah, she's awesome.
she is indeed. She's very musical, highly talented, very educated, and yes, that is like her experiences. Which is, we could devote a whole show to her. And if she wasn't residing in Indonesia, you could probably have her on as your guest.
Oh my God, I would love to have her on.
Well, you'd have to get up very early, or she'd have to go to bed very late to do that. But because they're about 12 hours difference depending on the time of year. Oh, I could say so many good things about her, and I do. But she's had similar experiences to what we're talking about, the attachments. Some of them are desirable. Some of them, I just don't think they have enough power to overtake somebody's life and ruin their life. It's just somebody already had a psychological predisposition to being taken over. Like yeah, your friend. It's just that it's not always a bad thing to have attachment. Call them, talk to them. They'll give you some information. They might lead you to some other reality.
Yeah.
I don't overrate them nor underestimate them. They can be a useful tool. Maybe they were even people at one time. Maybe they're elementals.
Aw.
What you got?
She said,
Yes,
thank
she
you,
is.
Carl. Yeah.
Oh, she is proud to know us, Taryn. Well,
Yeah.
we're proud to know you, Zhang. We are very much blessed with you. You're one of the bright
Yeah.
lights in the
And
show.
what's good is that, Mike, my friend Mike, and this is why I do this, and this is what I'm saying. Like, um, like Zhang and Mike, um, Mike doesn't watch very often. He pops in when he can. He's like, he's awesome. I love him.
Maybe
And
that's an attachment. Have you ever thought of that? You say just there, sometimes it's not. I mean, how well do you know?
Mike, are you my attachment? But but they, they barely watch. They watch here and there. They pop in, they'll say hi, whatever. But there's a reason they're watching tonight.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for them to hear that there's other people out there that maybe have experienced the same
And
thing
see
that
how
they have.
valuable your show is. See how we're networking and we're jumping from topic to topic. That's the nature of the business.
Yeah.
You can do a show all on like we do with Duo or Daemonology. You can have topics like Rasputin. I'm 100. Hers 100%.
He's my attachment.
I can kind of understand. And what was it? We did a show in January. No, I mean actually it was February when I was really hurting with COVID. But my voice was rough, but I was able to do the show. It's just that I used up my voice as we went along.
Right.
And we did a show on the historic personage of Grigory Rasputin. You want to talk about Elise doing research? She got to know about imperialist Russia and about the Duma, their parliament, and you know how Rasputin, how his uprising and his downfall is coming into prominence. We all did research on Rasputin. I'd done most of my research long ago on Rasputin, or Rasputin is how you would say it. And then James, at the end of the show, he wants me to do the Rasputin dance.
Today?
Yeah, no, not today, but he did like a month
You
ago.
can do it. You can do it at the end of our dance. At the end of our dance. At the end of the show.
I am in the headquarters of the Johnston Historical Society. If I do the Rasputin dance, I like run up the stairs and things. Probably the computer screen will go down. Papers will scatter.
Oh.
Drawers will up. Something will get busted because it's a very vigorous dance.
Oh, sounds it.
I'll bust something, and then I will be known as the lug. And then they'll say, how did this, how come the computer's on the floor? How come, there's broken glass? Carl had to do his Rasputin dance. Oh, I can do it. I can do it.
I believe you.
If I was in James's office, maybe I would, his famous room, as he calls it, maybe I would do it there. Try not to step on his.
You're getting yelled at. You're getting yelled at.
Yelled at already? Oh, who we got? Yeah.
Don't break anything.
Don't break anything. I didn't know Elise was still on. I didn't know. Well, I'm being good. I'm behaving.
Yeah, he's not doing it, unfortunately.
Imagine Elise's horror if all of a sudden I'm like, going like that and jumping around and she hears cracking around. And now you could do some damage here without trying to. I could fall backwards into the glass partition. I could to the cubicle. I could mess things up. And there's no excuse for it at my age, really.
True.
Yeah. So I'll behave.
All right, Carl.
We have gone a half an hour over our time. I know.
That's okay. That's all right.
But yeah.
But it was a pleasure. Sad that Elise or James couldn't join us, but next time definitely.
The tour de force that we are. Would you like to have Elise on as your guest again and just have it about Elise? Well, I mean, her, what she has to say.
Oh yeah.
Elise and I are very similar in our outlooks, so we're on the same page. But she has her own stories and her own presentation.
We're gonna save your dance for when she comes on.
I think she'll notice it. I can't do it silently. Yeah. Yeah.
But,
I mean, I will be there to, like lend some support or whatever, like she does for me. She adjusts the lighting and all when she's here. But, Elise will be your guest. I won't talk over her or anything. Just talk a little. Yeah.
But I appreciate you coming on, even regardless, and thank you for your time. and we'll have to get together and figure out our next show
Yeah.
date, and then go from there. Thank you.
Anytime you like, my
Thanks for
dear.
sharing your stories, and thanks for being open and honest, and
You put the point in the slot, and I just took it from there. Like you talk about things in which I'm interested. Of course, I'm going to go on.
oh, thank you.
I hope I was not at any time controversial.
No, not at all.
No, of course
You're
not.
you. We love you.
Thank you. Love you too.
And we will talk soon, my dear.
I'll be around.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you, audience. Thank you, everybody, listeners. You got a good show here to listen to.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
I'll talk soon to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.